Okay, hello everyone. Welcome again here at the fundamentals of web design. All right, so we're now on the topic 6. So this is CSS, the cascading style sheet. So basically, these are our learning objectives for this topic. So we will be able to learn or to write CSS syntax and its comments. Then we will also learning how to apply basic formatting tags and the basic formatting for images or objects using the CSS objects. And aside from that, we'll also including here the some other formatting objects or tags using the CSS. Okay, let's start with the definition of the CSS. So what is CSS? So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So it describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in other media. And then it saves a lot of work. Why? Because it can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. Okay, and then external style sheets are stored in CSS files. So ano siya, just what I mentioned or what we learned in the previous topics that um, um, the difference between HTML and CSS that HTML are what makita sa HTML page are those are content sa imong web page. While sa CSS, una sila ang mag-design or mag-style sa imong content sa sulod sa imong web page. Alright. So basically, ang HTML is your backbone. And then, CSS then mo na siya imong mag-style sa imong web page. Okay. So here, why you use the CSS? So we use a CSS because it is used to define styles, no? To define styles for your web pages, and including your design, your layout, and variations in display for different devices and screen sizes. So that's the reason why we use CSS. So we have here CSS solved a big problem. So HTML was never intended to contain tags for formatting a web page. It was created to describe the content of a web page like your H1, your paragraph. So when tags like font and color attributes were added to HTML 3.2 specification, it started a nightmare for web developers. Why? Because development of large websites where fonts and color information were added to every single page, and it became a long and expensive process. So in order for this to solve, so the W3C created CSS. So they removed the style formatting from from the HTML page. So the focus now sa HTML is more on the content, and then the CSS more on designing or styling your content. Okay, so here this is the syntax for CSS. So as you can see, we have the selector, the declarations. So the selector points to the HTML element you want to style. So selector mo sila ang mag-call sa imong element. And then the declaration block contains one or more declarations separated by semicolon. So in this case, we have two declarations. So it is separated by the semicolon. So each declaration includes a CSS property name and a value separated by colon. So each declaration is composed of property name, which for this example we have the color and the font size, and its value. So it's separated with colon. Alright. So multiple CSS declarations are separated with semicolons, and declaration blocks are surrounded by curly braces. So dapat nakasunod siya sa curly braces ang imong mga declaration. So ang mga siya basically ang syntax sa imong CSS. So we have the selector. So for this instance we have the H1. So then you have to open the bracket brace, then your declaration, your property and the value, and then you can close then the brace. Okay. So in this example, so all P elements will be centered aligned with a red text color. So we have already we have already discussed this in our previous topic. So P is the selector. In this case, P is the selector in the CSS, in which it points to the HTML element you want to style, the P tag. And then the color is a property in, and the red is the property value. Same with the case with this one. Text align is your property and your value is the center. So okay, the CSS ID selector. So the ID selector uses the ID attribute of an HTML element to select a specific element. Right? So the ID of an element is unique within a page. So the ID selector is used to select one unique element. So to select an element with a specified ID, write a hash number or number sign character followed by the ID of the element. So for this example, so we have the CSS rule will be applied to the HTML element with ID para 1. So kani siya sa iyang HTML we dagi nang use yung ID. So in this case we use the para 1. So sa iyang CSS ni di ba ang kuan the previous kuan when you use ID you start with a hash number or a number sign and then your ID number. So basically iyang gi-call gi-point ang aning gi-call niya ang para 1 kani na ID sa HTML which is your paragraph. So iya dan i-style imong hello world to text align naka-center and then color it. So in this case this below ano siya ang paragraph 1, the hello world. Okay. So just take note, class, that an ID name cannot start with a number. So it should be dili dapat siya mag-start og number imong ID. So di na siya allowed sa sa coding. Okay. Next is we have the CSS class selector. So the class selector kung natay ID naputay class selector. So the class selector selects HTML elements with a specific class attribute. So to select elements with a specific class, write a period character followed by a class name. So sa ID we have magamit tag ID, we use the number sign, and for the plus selector, we use the dot or the period character. So in this example, we use the class center, then di mo dani gamit ka o period instead of what instead of ni hash number or number sign. So unsa kilainan na sa ID ug class? So ID can only is a unique name, so can only use once, while the class it can use selects or HTML elements with specific pwede naman siya magamit sa different elements sa imong HTML. As you can see, magamit mo siya pwede naman siya magamit sa H1, then nagamit po siya sa paragraph. So pwede niya ma-following duwa. So in this case, iyang na-designan or na-stylean ang H1 of P. It is red, ano siya nga. Okay, so just note class that class name cannot start with, again, number. So same lang siya sa ID. Okay. So next is okay, you can also specify that only specific HTML elements should be affected by a class. So in this example, so only P elements with a class center will be red and centered aligned. So okay, so in this case, pwede ra, so since kato ganiya kay ang duwa no, ang H1 ang paragraph ang na kuan niya na stylean, if kung gusto kag kanilang, for in this case kanilang akong P paragraph ang akong stylean, so we use the first the element and then period, then the class name. So we call din yang P, which is this one. So mora yang na stylean. So as you can see here below. So that's the class selector. The next is, so HTML elements can also refer to more than one class. So in this example, the P element will be styled according to class center and class large. So pwede siya, no? Elements can also refer to more than one class. So more than one class, yeah. So pwede ra gamit siya yung class na center o duwa yung center o large. So pag after done ni as CSS, pwede naman siya i-call ang P center alone or the P large. Pwede rin na siya. So sa imong HTML, pwede duwa kabok ang class name, and then for your CSS nakuha, pwede nimo siya i-separate, nimo siya call. So that's how that's the class selector when you have in your HTML elements, kung duwa ka book kung one or more than one class ang nasa imong HTML elements, you can call it individually here in the CSS. So we have also the CSS universal selector. So the universal selector, or asterisk, selects all the HTML elements on the page. So the CSS rule below will affect every HTML element on the page. So tanan jud yang, if you're going to use the asterisk, right? Yeah, asterisk. So iyang tanan, ma mapiktuhan ng tanan. So from the word universal, so tanan jud iya, all everything will be styled when you use the universal selector. So we have also the CSS grouping selector. So the grouping selector selects all the HTML elements with the same style definition. So look at the following CSS code. The H1, the H2, and the P elements have the same style definition. So you can have grouping selectors for that. So it will be better to group the selectors to minimize the code. So to group the selectors, separate each selector with a comma. So in this example, we have grouped the selectors from code above. So you can group mo siya iyang pasabot. You can use the one or more selectors. So in this case, gusto niya kanang H1 ag H2 ug P, pwede ra siya iisa. You can use this, you can have this syntax H1 comma then another code element. Okay, same lang siya, nana lang. Okay, next is how to add CSS. So I think we have already tackle this sa previous topic. So there are 3 ways to insert CSS. So we have the external, the internal, and in the inline CSS. So when you say external, so with an external style sheet, you can change the look of your entire website by changing just one file. And then each HTML page must include a reference to the external style sheet file inside the link element inside the head section. Now, that I'm going to discuss. And then external styles are defined with the link element inside the head section of an HTML page. Okay, ito atong nakuha. It's inside siya sa imo head, then naha siya sa link tag. So man sila, so the rel mo na siyang syntax to the rel. I think it's relation to your link sa mong CSS or href, your CSS file. So an external style sheet can be written in any text editor and must be saved with .css extension. So for HTML, we have .html, and then for the CSS, .css. So the external .css file should not contain any HTML tags. So here is how the mystyle.css file looks. So it will not contain any HTML tags na atong nakasulod sa atong lesser than or greater than. Okay, so just note class that do not add space between the property value and the unit. Property value and the unit. So dili dapat wala siya dapat space, dapat sila sunod lang jud sila. So dapat wala space if na ay mga unit imong value. So that's for external. So we'll move to internal. So internal style sheet may be used if one single HTML ito. Okay. The internal style sheet may be used if one single HTML page has a unique style. The internal style is defined inside the style, same. And then internal styles are defined within the style element inside the head section of an HTML page. So, itong internal, so nara siya sa imong isa ka HTML. So, nara siya sulod sa imong style. Then, so inline. So, ang inline style may be unique to apply a unique style for a single element. To use inline styles, add the style attribute to the relevant element. So, honestly, ato naman siya na di ko ito na-discuss the difference between the three. And then, we have multiple style sheets. So, if some properties have been defined for the same selector or element in different style sheets, the value from the last read style sheet will be used. So assume that an external style sheet has the following style for the each one element. So then assume that an internal style sheet also has the following style for each one element. So you can use the multiple style sheets here. So if the internal style is defined after the link to the external style sheet, the H1 elements will be orange. So pwede rin siya multiple style sheets in gamitan. In this case, gamit sa external and then your internal. So however, if the internal style is defined before the link to the external style sheet, the H1 elements will be navy. Before as kung dani siya before siya it will be navy color. So dapat mag-una ang external. Kaya mao man yang una basahon. Okay. Then so what is cascading order? So what style will be used when there is more than one style specific for an HTML element? So all the styles in a page will cascade into a new virtual style sheet by the following rules, where number 1 has the highest priority. So inline style inside an HTML element, external and internal style sheets in the head section, browser default. So an inline style has the highest priority and will override external and internal styles and browser defaults. Mo siya ang cascading order saan yung pag-declare pagkuhan dito sa imong HTML. So kung una imong kuhan inline, so the inline has the highest priority and will override the external and internal styles and browser defaults. So in this case we have multiple style cascading. So here the background color of the page is set with inline CSS. So inline na mga inline na. So inline CSS and also with the internal CSS and also with the external. So pakita lang niya kung ang kuan ang if gamit ka o multiple style sheets, so it's for you daw to kamo na try to experiment by removing style to see how the cascading style sheets work. So you can we can have this in the after midterm on how to, or you can do experiment no there sa mong PC or laptop. Try to removing style kung unsay mag-work. Kung i-remove ba ni mong external or the inline or internal or the other way, the inline na style sheet. Unsay lang result tayo. Okay, let's move forward with the CSS comments. So comments are used to explain the code and may help when you edit the source code at a later date. So comments are ignored by browsers. So a CSS comment displays inside the style element and starts with this one. So sa di ba sa HTML sa itong comment, so we have katong mga lesser than or greater than, no, katong na exclamation point dayon, then dash, duha ka dash, then mo to siyang sa HTML. For the CSS comments mo ni sa atong gamito, start with this one and ends with this one. Okay, so ang CSS comments is it is located, no, displays on your style, and for the HTML comment, na siya sa imong HTML na play. Okay, let's proceed with the CSS border style. So these are the border style property. So we have the dotted, the dash. You're going to style your border. So these are your border style property. So the border style property can have one or two four values for the top border, right? Right border, bottom border, and the left border. So you can style your borders. So it can be the top border, the right or left, or your bottom border. So honestly, so just Manila border style, then sinasta value dotted, and so CSS border width. The border width property specifies the width of the four borders. So the width can be set as a specific size in pixels, pt, cm, centimeter, etc., or by using one of the three predefined values, thin, medium, or thick. So honestly, pag border width nimo, can use this 5 pixels or specific size jud yung gusto gamiton, or you can have the predefined values, like you can replace this here, thin, medium, or thick. Okay, so specific side width. So the border width properties can have one or more from 1 to 4 values for the top border, and right border, bottom border, and the left border. So manila you can have if gusto nyo i-style ang each borders, no? So in this case, top and bottom, 5px top and bottom, on the sides, kani siya top, bottom, 20. So kani siya top, bottom, Yung order ani, as you can see, then duwara ka yung value dani upat. So ang first dana is top, then we have the bottom, I mean the right, top, right, and then top, right, and bottom, and then left border. Kung upat na siya, mo na siya ang iyang top, right, bottom ug left. Pwede na sila interchange. So kamo lang kuha na explore. And then okay na ready. So CSS border individual sides. So in CSS there are also properties for specifying each of the borders, top, right, bottom, and left. So ano siya, border ay ang ganito. Okay. Ang gani border width around we specify jud individual sides, border, top, style man siya specify nato. So the example above gives the same result as this. Okay, border size same result. So here is how it works. So if the border style property has 4 values, so moto, if upat ka values, so the border style dotted solid double dash. So upat ka value man. So meaning top border is dotted, right border is solid, bottom border is double, and left border is dash. So mo na siya yung sequence. So top, right, bottom, and left. So if the border style property has 3 values, you can have top, right, bottom. So man siya kung duwa, top, right. If the border style property has 2 values, border style, so top and bottom borders are top and okay, kung duwa lang siya ka value, so that means top and bottom borders are dotted, right and left. Okay, right and left borders are solid. So kung duwa lang yung value, so meaning top and bottom pareha, right and left pareha. So kung sa kuan, kung tulo lang di ay top, kung tulo lang top is top, and then partner din is right and left. So bottom din ang ika-third. Okay. And then for the border style, if one has 1 value, all 4 borders are dotted. Okay. So balik ko na to kung upat ka value, yung order should be top, right, bottom, left. Kung tulo lang, top ang una, then ang second is right and left, and the third is the bottom. And kung duwa lang ka value, top and bottom are partners na siya, best partner, top and bottom, and right and left borders. And then for the borders, kung 1 value lang, then all 4 borders are on the same style. Okay. So next is so we're still on the CSS border style. So how if we're going to style our borders into rounded borders? So the border dash radius property is used to add rounded borders to an element. So you're going to use the border radius. Okay. Next is okay. We're now on the margins. So margins are used to create space around elements outside of any defined borders. So individual sides. So CSS has properties for specifying the margin for each side of an element. So we have the margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. So all the margin properties can have the following values. Auto, so the browser calculates the margin. That's for auto margin. Length specifies a margin in pixels, etc. Percent specifies a margin in percent of the width of the containing element. And then inherit specifies that margin should be inherited from the parent element. Okay. So margin shorthand property. To shorten the code, it is possible to specify all the margin properties in one property. So the margin property is a shorthand property for the following individual margin properties. Margin top, it's okay. So same like the border. No? So if the margin property has 4 values, so margin na siya kung same jap siya katong top low lang na. Same na jap sa border, so top jatong order sa top right, bottom left, and then top, then left and right, right and left, and then bottom, then top and bottom, right and left, and then all fours are the same value or margin. Okay. Next is, okay, we're done with margin. Now we're on the padding. Okay, the padding, the CSS padding properties are used to generate space around an element's content inside any defined borders. Dili itong padding, no? Ako siya ay mong space between sa imong element, content o sa borders. Again, for individual side, you can have padding top, right, bottom, left. So, one is left properties. If you specify mong length, you can use the pixels, and then kanina mong unit, and then percent, or the figure. Okay, for short, okay, same Japan siya sa padding, margins, borders, ano sila. Okay, and the CSS box model. So in CSS, the term box model is used when thinking about design and layout. So the CSS box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. It consists of margins, borders, padding, and the actual content. So the image below illustrates okay. So not below, it's the next slide. Okay. So explanation for this. So the content. So the content of the box are the text and the images appear. So basically, mo na simong CSS box model. So we have the content, which it's where your text and images appear, and your padding. Clear an area around the content, kadimong space, sa imong content, and the border. Ano yung padding, kanina white space, a white color, and then you have the border that goes around the padding. Here you have the border and the margin. So the box model allows to add border around elements and to define space between elements. Basically, mo na yung CSS box model. So okay, CSS text. So same na dyan, text color. Color property is used to set the color of the text. Wait. And then the background color, no? Text alignment, the text decoration, the kung na siya decoration, you can remove the value sa text decoration. You can use the none. The text decoration values are used to decorate text. So ito yung mga overline, line through, or underline. Mas lang samples sa text decoration. And then we have the text transformation. Text transformation property is used to specify uppercase and lowercase. Text spacing. So imong indent, spacing, height, and this word spacing, the white space. And then you have also the text shadow. Okay, let's proceed with the CSS list. So the CSS list properties allows you to set different list item markers for ordered lists, also with unordered list, and set an image as the list item marker, add background colors to the list and list item. Okay, we have different list item markers. So we're going to use the list type. The list style type property specifies the type of list item marker. So you can have a circle, baka, circle, square, upper Roman, lower alpha. So this is the sample output for this code. And then this is pwede po ka magamit og image. The list style image property specifies an image as the list item marker. So you can insert the URL or the so mo siyang syntax. List style image, then URL, then image. So basically mo ano yung gamit na image. Square purple. Yes. Okay. And then position the list item markers. Okay, the list for this you can use the list style position property. Kung asa nimo siya i position like the outside or your inside. So outside means that the bullet points will be outside the list item, the start of each. So inside means that the bullet points will be inside the list. So you can see the difference. Next is I think the CSS layout width and max width. So setting the width of block level element will prevent it from stretching out the edges of its container. Then you can set the margins to auto to horizontally center the element within its container. So the element will take up the specified width and the remaining space will be split equally between the two margins. So using max width instead in this situation will improve the browser's handling small windows. So this is important when making a site visible on small devices. So magamit it's mas tsada yung gamiton ng max width, no? Kani siya ng max width kung okay para if ever i-adjust gamit yung browser will be adjusted kung sa mga device mo gamiton. Like if you're using a laptop, so you can also adjust po yung browser kung dito nimo i-open sa mobile phone. So di siya maputol. So if you're going to use the max width. So okay, I think that's all for this CSS. So more on CSS will be discussed after na sa midterm. So more laboratories. Thank you everyone.